Friday afternoon, 4:47. The conference room felt smaller than usual as Marcus leaned across the table, his eyes cold and calculating. HR Representative Janet sat beside him, her discomfort obvious but her mouth firmly shut. My heart hammered against my ribs as Marcus delivered his ultimatum with casual cruelty. Work this Sunday or lose my job. Simple as that. He had no idea who I was meeting on Sunday, no idea what was actually at stake. I had to make a choice, and both options felt like losing. I sat frozen in that conference room chair, my mind racing backward through the past 3 months while Marcus waited for my answer. My hands felt cold despite the warmth of the room. 6 years. I had given this company 6 years of my life. Started as a junior analyst fresh out of college, learning the systems, proving myself project by project. Worked late when others went home. Mentored new hires on my own time. Led 3 major product launches that exceeded every target. TechVista Solutions had become more than just my employer. It was where I built my career, my reputation, my confidence. Then Stephen retired. Our VP of operations for 20 years decided it was time to travel and spend time with his grandchildren. Nobody blamed him. He had earned his rest, but his departure created a vacuum, and the company hired Marcus Brennan to fill it. Marcus came from our main competitor with promises of fresh perspectives and aggressive growth strategies. His first week, he held a department meeting where he outlined his vision for operational excellence. He used phrases like synergy and optimization and talked about raising the bar. When he mentioned the Data Bridge project, our most important initiative, he described it as if he had been leading it all along. Never mind that I had spent 18 months developing that system from concept to near completion. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. New bosses often need time to understand team dynamics. Maybe he was just asserting authority. Maybe I was being sensitive. But the signs multiplied. Marcus assigned me additional administrative tasks while transferring my high-visibility presentations to himself. He questioned my decisions in front of the team, second-guessing choices that had already proven successful. He scheduled mandatory meetings during time I had requested off weeks in advance. When I tried to discuss these conflicts professionally, he canceled our one-on-one sessions twice, then simply stopped responding to my calendar invites. 3 weeks after his arrival, Marcus brought in Brad Sullivan as a consultant. Brad was another transplant from the competitor, someone Marcus had worked with before. Within days, it became clear that Brad was not just consulting. He was being groomed for something bigger. Marcus included him in executive meetings, asked for his input on my projects, praised his innovative thinking in company-wide emails. I kept my head down and focused on my work. The Data Bridge launch was scheduled for 4 months out. If I could deliver that successfully, my track record would speak for itself. I had always believed that good work protected you, that merit mattered more than politics. The week leading up to that Friday had been particularly tense. Monday morning, Marcus announced an undefined project emergency requiring weekend work. Tuesday, I requested a meeting to discuss workload balance and prioritization. He canceled twice. Wednesday afternoon, I passed by his office and overheard him talking to Brad. The door was slightly open. Marcus was saying something about needing fresh blood in leadership positions, about people who understood modern business demands. My stomach had twisted, but I told myself I was reading too much into it. Paranoia was not productive. Thursday, Marcus sent a department-wide email announcing mandatory Sunday work for the entire team. He looked directly at me when he hit send, watching for my reaction. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was calculating. Sunday was not just any Sunday. It was the day I had a lunch meeting that had been on my calendar for 8 weeks. Friday morning, I arrived early and went straight to Marcus' office. Professional, calm. I explained that I had a prior commitment on Sunday that I could not reschedule. I offered to work Saturday instead, to complete any urgent deliverables ahead of the deadline. I provided solutions. He dismissed me without even looking up from his computer. just waved his hand toward the door and said we would discuss it later. Later turned out to be 4:47 that afternoon when Janet from HR called me into the conference room. Marcus was already there, sitting at the head of the table like he was conducting a tribunal. Now, as I sat across from him processing his ultimatum, he leaned back in his chair with a satisfied expression. He was enjoying this. Then he added the detail that made everything click into place. "I've been reviewing your performance, Danya," he said, his tone dripping with false concern. "Frankly, I'm not impressed. This Sunday is your chance to prove you're committed to this team's future. Brad will be there, of course. He understands what dedication looks like, is willing to sacrifice personal time for the good of the company." Janet shifted uncomfortably beside him, but said nothing. And suddenly, I understood. This was not about a project emergency. There was no crisis requiring Sunday work. This was about systematically pushing me out to make room for Brad. Marcus needed me to either cave and look desperate or refuse and look uncommitted. Either way, he won. My throat felt tight. 6 years of excellent performance reviews, commendations from the CEO, thank you notes from colleagues I had helped, awards for project excellence. And now I was sitting in a conference room being told I was not good enough by a man who had been here 3 months. The injustice of it burned in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. What specific deliverables require my physical presence on Sunday morning? Marcus waved his hand dismissively. It's about strategic alignment, team cohesion, being present when it matters. I can complete any urgent tasks tonight and tomorrow. I'm offering flexibility. Sunday, 9 o'clock. That's non-negotiable. Janet finally spoke, her voice careful. Dania, perhaps you could reschedule your appointment? In the interest of team solidarity. I looked at her. This woman from HR who was supposed to protect employees from exactly this kind of manipulation. But she was protecting the company, not me. Protecting Marcus. The appointment has been scheduled for 8 weeks, I said quietly. It involves multiple parties and cannot be rescheduled. Marcus stood up, buttoning his suit jacket with theatrical finality. Then you need to decide what matters more, Danya. Your job or your appointment. I'll expect your decision by end of business today. He walked out, leaving me sitting there with Janet, who could not quite meet my eyes. I returned to my desk in a fog. The office had that late Friday afternoon energy, people wrapping up tasks and making weekend plans. But something was different. Colleagues who normally stopped by to chat walked past without making eye contact. The usual friendly atmosphere felt strained. Jenna Martinez, one of my closest friends on the team, appeared beside my desk. She leaned in close and whispered, "He told everyone about the ultimatum. During the 3 o'clock meeting you were not invited to." My stomach dropped. "He what? Said you were refusing to be a team player?" That Sunday was a test of commitment. Some people are choosing sides, Danya. I'm sorry. I looked around the office with new eyes. Small clusters of people talking in low voices. Some sympathetic glances quickly averted. Others, like Brad, wearing smug expressions. The damage was already done. Marcus had weaponized my personal conflict into a public referendum on my character. Brad walked past my desk carrying a stack of folders. He paused just long enough to say, "Tough choice, huh? Team players versus prima donnas. Guess we'll see which one you are." His smile was cruel as he continued toward Marcus' office. At 5:30, most people had left for the weekend. I sat at my desk staring at my computer screen. An email notification popped up. Marcus had sent a formal written warning to my file, copying HR. Subject line: Pattern of unavailability and lack of commitment to team success. I read it 3 times. The language was carefully constructed, vague enough to avoid specifics but damaging enough to create a paper trail. He was building a case for my termination, documenting his narrative, 1 email at a time. I could not reveal what Sunday actually was. The lunch meeting with CEO Robert Patterson and board member Catherine Wells had been scheduled 2 months ago. The calendar invite was marked private with no details. When Robert's assistant had called to set it up, she had said only that they wanted to discuss company leadership and my perspective on strategic development opportunities. I had suspected immediately what it meant. The VP of Strategic Development position had been open for 4 months. 3 candidates were in final consideration, and I was one of them. This lunch was my interview, though nobody called it that officially. Missing it would eliminate me from consideration. Robert and Catherine would assume I was not serious about advancement, but I could not tell Marcus any of this. First, because the process was confidential. Second, because if Marcus knew I was being considered for a role that would place me 2 levels above him in the organizational chart, his sabotage would only intensify. I was trapped. Damned if I worked Sunday. Damned if I did not. At 7:30, I finally left the office. The parking garage was nearly empty, my footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before starting the engine, trying to organize my thoughts. At home, I changed into comfortable clothes and made tea I did not drink. I pulled out 6 years of performance reviews and read through them. Exceeds expectations. Exceptional project leadership. Invaluable team asset. Strong candidate for advancement. The words felt hollow now, meaningless in the face of Marcus' determination to erase my reputation. I called Angela Rodriguez, a former colleague who had left TechVista 2 years ago to take a director position at another company. Angela had been my mentor when I was starting out, and we had stayed close. "Hez bullying you," Angela said bluntly after I explained the situation. "This is textbook intimidation. Hez creating an impossible scenario so he can justify whatever outcome he wants. I don't know what to do," I admitted. "If I give in, I prove I can be manipulated. If I refuse, I lose my job. Here is what I know about you, Dania. You're one of the most principled people I've ever worked with. If this job requires you to sacrifice your integrity and your self-respect, then it's not the right job. There are other companies, but there's only one you." Her words settled something in my chest. I thanked her and hung up. I drafted an email to Marcus. Professional, factual. I stated that I could not work Sunday due to a prior commitment that had been scheduled for 2 months. I offered detailed alternatives, completing all deliverables by Saturday evening, being available by phone on Sunday afternoon, working the following weekend if necessary. I attached a summary of my project contributions over the past 6 months and my attendance record, which showed I had never missed a deadline or refused reasonable requests. I reread it 5 times, checking for any hint of emotion or defensiveness. At 8:20, I hit send. The response came within 7 minutes. "Your decision is noted. Well, address this Monday morning." No acknowledgement of my offer to find solutions. No recognition of my track record. Just a veiled threat wrapped in corporate speak. I closed my laptop and tried to sleep, but my mind would not quiet. At 8:45, I checked my personal email one last time. There was a new message from an address I did not recognize. No name, just a string of numbers and letters. Subject line, "You should know the truth." My hand trembled as I opened it. Inside was a forwarded email chain between Marcus and Brad, dated 2 weeks earlier. I read with growing horror as Marcus laid out his strategy. Patterson is considering Dania for the VP role. We need to document performance issues before the board meeting. Create situations where she fails to meet expectations. The Sunday requirement should do it. Either she caves and looks desperate, or she refuses and looks uncommitted. Either way, we build our case. Brad, you start positioning yourself as the natural successor. Show initiative. By the time HR processes her termination, you'll be the obvious choice to handle her responsibilities. Brad's response. Smart. What about the rest of the team? Marcus. They'll fall in line once they see there are consequences for not supporting new leadership. Make an example of one. Control the rest. Basic management. I read the exchange 3 more times, my hands shaking with rage. This was not about my performance or commitment. This was a calculated campaign to destroy my career so Brad could take my place, and Marcus felt confident enough to put it in writing. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. Not just Marcus, who I had never trusted, but the system itself. HR was complicit. My colleagues were too afraid to speak up. The company I had given 6 years to was allowing this to happen. I took screenshots of everything, saved them to 3 different locations, and forwarded the emails to my personal backup account. Then I sat in the darkness of my living room, feeling the weight of what came next. I had to choose. But suddenly, the choice was not just about Sunday. It was about what kind of person I was willing to become. I did not sleep Friday night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus' smug face across that conference room table. At 2 a.m, I got up and made coffee, then sat at my kitchen table rereading the leaked emails. The thread was longer than I had initially realized. I scrolled back through 3 weeks of correspondence. Marcus and Brad had been planning this since the moment Marcus learned I was being considered for the VP position. The messages revealed a detailed strategy. They had manipulated project deadlines, creating artificial crises that made me appear inefficient. When I delivered the quarterly marketing analysis, Brad had accessed my file and altered 3 slides before the executive presentation, inserting data errors that made me look careless. Marcus then pointed out these mistakes during the meeting, questioning my attention to detail in front of the senior team. The timestamp on Brad's computer access showed it happened at 11:30 the night before the presentation, long after I had finalized the document. They had scheduled conflicting meetings deliberately. When I had to choose between the client call and the budget review, both scheduled at the same time, Marcus documented my absence from the budget meeting as evidence of poor prioritization. Never mind that the client call had been scheduled first and was time-sensitive. They had even created the appearance of poor time management by moving meeting locations without telling me, then noting my late arrivals as a pattern of unprofessionalism. Every frustration of the past 3 months suddenly made sense. This was not bad luck or miscommunication. This was systematic, intentional sabotage. I kept reading. Brad had inflated his resume. His previous role was not director level, as he had claimed. He had no experience leading teams larger than 5 people. The innovations he took credit for in presentations were actually developed by others. Marcus knew all of this and did not care. Brad was loyal, and that was what mattered. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold. I showered and dressed, trying to create some sense of normalcy. At 9:15, Jenna texted me. Brad showed up at the office early. Hez throwing what he's calling a Sunday prep party. Ordered catered lunch for everyone. Marcus sent company-wide email praising dedicated team members who sacrifice weekends. This is so messed up. I stared at the message, feeling sick. The manipulation was masterful. Marcus was positioning Sunday work as a celebration, making anyone who did not attend look like an outsider. Several colleagues texted throughout the morning, their messages carefully worded. Are you reconsidering? We all have to be team players sometimes. I know it's hard, but maybe it's worth it to just show up. The subtext was clear. They were afraid. They had bills to pay, families to support. They could not afford to be on Marcus' bad side. I understood. But understanding did not make it hurt less. Tom Harrison, a senior analyst who had been with the company 8 years, sent a different kind of message at 11 o'clock. I had Sunday plans too, family brunch for my daughter's birthday. I canceled them. Marcus made it clear that attendance was mandatory. I'm sorry, Dania. I should have stood with you, but I was scared. I appreciated his honesty even as it confirmed my fears. Marcus had successfully created a culture of intimidation in just 3 months. My mother called at noon. She was the only person outside work who knew about Sunday's lunch meeting, though I had not told her the details. She just knew it was important, something I had been preparing for. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" she asked. "I've been better, Mom." I gave her a vague explanation of the situation, not mentioning names or specifics, just that my new boss was pressuring me to work Sunday and threatening my job if I refused. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your father used to say, 'Stand for something or fall for anything.' Sounds like someone is threatened by you. That's usually a sign you're doing something right." After we hung up, I sat with her words. Threatened. Of course, Marcus saw me as competition, an obstacle to his plans for Brad. In his mind, eliminating me was just smart strategy. I spent the afternoon researching company policy on mandatory overtime, employment law regarding retaliation, my contract terms about weekend work requirements. The policy manual was clear. Non-emergency weekend work required 2 weeks advance notice, except in cases of genuine business crisis. Marcus had given less than a week and could not articulate any specific crisis. I also researched constructive dismissal, creating intolerable working conditions to force resignation. That was exactly what Marcus was doing. I prepared a folder with all my documentation, screenshots of the leaked emails, copies of my original project files showing timestamps before Brad's alterations, the performance review history, everything organized and ready. At 11 o'clock Saturday morning, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Dania? This is Catherine Wells." My heart stopped. Catherine Wells. Board member? One of the 2 people I was supposed to meet for lunch tomorrow. "I hope our lunch is still on for tomorrow," she said, her voice warm but professional. "Robert and I are very much looking forward to a detailed conversation about your vision for the strategic development role." I managed to say yes. It was still on. Good. "I'll be direct with you, Dania. You're the front-runner for this position, but we need to hear your perspective on current operational challenges. We value honesty and clear thinking. Between you and me, bring your unfiltered assessment of what's working and what's not. We're looking for someone who can see problems clearly and address them." After she hung up, I sat frozen on my couch. The board already suspected something was wrong with Marcus. They wanted my honest assessment. They were giving me an opportunity to expose his misconduct at the highest level. But if I canceled tomorrow's lunch, I would lose everything. The promotion, the chance to fix the department, the opportunity to stop Marcus from destroying anyone else's career. And if I attended, I had to decide whether to protect myself by telling the truth about Marcus or stay silent and let his behavior continue. The weight of the decision felt crushing. Saturday afternoon stretched endlessly. After Catherine's call, I sat in my living room, trying to organize my thoughts. The lunch tomorrow was not just an interview. It was a test of my judgment, my integrity, my leadership potential. The board wanted my honest assessment of operational challenges. That was code. They were asking me to evaluate Marcus without directly asking. They suspected problems but needed someone with first-hand knowledge to confirm their concerns. If I exposed Marcus' sabotage, I would look like I was playing politics, bad-mouthing a superior to advance my own career. But if I stayed silent, I would be complicit in his misconduct, allowing him to continue destroying careers and potentially damaging the company. The ethical path was clear. The political path was treacherous. My phone buzzed constantly throughout the afternoon. The Sunday prep party was in full swing according to Jenna's updates. Marcus had ordered expensive Italian catering. Brad was working the room, playing the role of dedicated team player. They had set up a projection screen and were reviewing project plans, making a show of their commitment. At 2 o'clock, a photo appeared in the team group text. Everyone gathered around the conference table, smiling with their plates of pasta and salad. Brad had his arm around Tom's shoulder. Marcus stood at the head of the table, like a proud father. The caption read, "Great energy today. Too bad the whole team isn't here." The guilt trip was deliberate and effective. Several people responded with laughing emojis and comments about team spirit. Nobody mentioned that this was supposed to be their weekend, their time with families and friends. At 2:15, Marcus texted me directly. Just 3 sentences. "Last chance to show up tomorrow. Door is still open. Your choice." I stared at the message for 5 minutes, then set my phone down without responding. I spent the afternoon preparing for Sunday's lunch. Not just talking points, but a comprehensive presentation of Marcus' sabotage. I created a timeline with dates and specific incidents. I documented the email chain showing premeditated planning. I included evidence of Brad's resume fabrication and the altered project files. But I also prepared a broader analysis. What operational improvements would actually benefit the company? How would I approach leadership differently? What systems needed changing to prevent this kind of misconduct? I had to show I was not just complaining about a bad boss. I was identifying systemic problems and offering solutions. That was what leaders did. At 4:30, I went for a walk through my neighborhood. The November air was crisp, leaves scattered across sidewalks. I passed the elementary school playground where I volunteered on weekends, coaching a girls' soccer team. Those girls looked up to me. I taught them about confidence, about standing up for themselves, about not letting anyone make them feel small. What would I tell them if they faced this situation? Would I advise them to compromise their values to keep a job? Would I tell them to accept bullying because fighting back was risky? The answer was obvious. I would tell them to stand firm, to trust their worth, to refuse to be diminished. I had to take my own advice. Back home, I video called my younger sister Emily. She was in her 3rd year of medical school, exhausted but passionate about her training. When I explained what was happening, she got that fierce look she always had when facing injustice. "You taught me everything about self-advocacy," Emily said. "Remember when that attending kept dismissing my patient assessments? You told me to document everything and report him through proper channels. You said never let anyone diminish your expertise. Now take your own advice, Dania." She was right. I had spent years mentoring others, telling them to stand up for themselves. Now I had to walk that talk. At 9:00 Saturday night, I opened my laptop and wrote a final email to Marcus. Professional, brief, no justification or apology. I will not be available Sunday as previously communicated. I remain committed to discussing workload management through appropriate channels next week. I hit send at exactly 10:00. His auto reply came back immediately. Out of office until Monday morning. He had already checked out for the weekend, confident that I would either show up Sunday or be terminated Monday. I closed my laptop and took a long shower, trying to wash away the tension. When I got out, I had another email from the anonymous sender. This time, it contained an audio file. My hands shook as I downloaded it and pressed play. The sound quality was muffled but clear enough. Marcus' voice, recorded Friday in that conference room after I had left. "Shall either break and show up tomorrow, proving she's spineless, or shall refuse and ill have grounds for termination Monday. Either way, Brad gets her role by end of month. Patterson is too soft to fight me on this. I've got allies on the board who understand that old school management isn't cutting it anymore." Janet's voice, hesitant. "Are you sure this is wise? Her record is spotless. If she files a complaint," Marcus laughed. "That's the beauty. No one expects the golden girl to get fired. By the time anyone questions it, it'll be done. HR will process it as a mutual separation. Well, give her a decent severance to keep things quiet. She'll go away. Brad will step up, and the department will be stronger for it. Trust me, I've done this before. I listened to the recording 3 times, my heart pounding. Marcus had done this before. He was not just a bad manager. He was a predator who systematically destroyed careers and had refined his approach across multiple companies. And he believed he had enough board support to override the CEO. Suddenly, tomorrow's lunch took on new urgency. If Marcus really did have board allies, then Robert and Catherine needed to know what they were dealing with. This was not just about my career anymore. This was about protecting the company itself. I forwarded the audio file to my backup accounts and saved it in 4 different locations. Then I updated my presentation folder, adding the recording to the evidence. At midnight, I finally went to bed. Sleep came in restless fragments, my mind replaying scenarios and rehearsing what I would say. When my alarm went off at 7 Sunday morning, I felt like I had not slept at all. But I also felt clear, resolved. Today, I would tell the truth. Whatever happened after that, I would face with my integrity intact. Sunday morning sunlight filtered through my bedroom curtains at 7 o'clock. I lay still for a moment, listening to the quiet of the city waking up. Somewhere across town, Marcus and Brad were probably already at the office, confident in their victory. They had no idea what was coming. I dressed carefully. Professional, but not overly formal. Navy blue dress, simple jewelry, minimal makeup. I wanted to look competent and composed. I reviewed my notes one final time over coffee I barely tasted, organized my documentation folder, and called a car service at 8:30. My phone buzzed at 8:32. Jenna. Everyone's here. Marcus keeps checking his phone. Hess asking where you are. Dania, this is bad. Hess making comments about your reliability. People are uncomfortable, but nobody's saying anything. Another text came at 8:55. Hess really angry now. Keeps pacing. Brad is trying to calm him down, but Marcus is on a rant about insubordination and lack of respect. Says you made your choice. I did not respond. There was nothing to say. Jenna's updates continued as I rode toward the restaurant. 9:15. Marcus just announced you're no longer a reliable team member. He's starting to redistribute your projects to Brad. I feel sick watching this. 9:30. Brad is openly talking about taking over your office. He's going through your assignments like you're already gone. Tom tried to say something, but Marcus shut him down hard. 10:45. This is wrong. Everyone knows it, but we're all too scared to speak up. I'm sorry, Dania. I arrived at the restaurant at 11:45, 15 minutes early. The place was upscale but not pretentious, known for private business lunches. The hostess checked my name and led me to a quiet table in the back corner, away from other diners. I ordered water and sat reviewing my notes, controlling my breathing. At 11:58, Robert Patterson walked through the door. He was in his early 60s, silver hair and kind eyes. He had built Tech Vista from a startup 23 years ago and still maintained the founder's combination of vision and genuine care for employees. When he saw me, his face broke into a warm smile. Dania, good to see you. We shook hands, and he sat across from me. 2 minutes later, Catherine Wells arrived. She was younger than Robert, maybe 50, with sharp intelligence evident in her direct gaze. She had joined the board 5 years ago and was known for asking tough questions and expecting honest answers. After we ordered, Robert got straight to the point. We've been watching your career growth with great interest, Dania. You've consistently exceeded expectations. Your project leadership has been exemplary. The Data Bridge initiative in particular shows the kind of strategic thinking we need at senior levels. Catherine leaned forward slightly. The VP of Strategic Development role requires someone with both vision and integrity. Someone who can see problems clearly and address them honestly. We're not just looking for technical skills. We need judgment and character. There was a weight to her words that made my pulse quicken. Robert continued, We want your perspective on the company's operational efficiency. Specifically, your assessment of current management structures and where you see opportunities for improvement. This was it, the moment of truth. I took a breath and made my decision. I appreciate your confidence in me. Before I share my assessment, I need to tell you something that's been happening over the past 3 months. I opened my folder and began laying out the evidence. The timeline of Marcus' sabotage. The leaked emails showing premeditated planning to force me out. The altered project files with timestamps proving Brad's misconduct. The recording from Friday's conference room. As I talked, Robert's expression grew darker. Catherine took notes, asking sharp questions about dates and specifics. Neither of them looked surprised. Exactly. More like they were having suspicions confirmed. When I finished, there was a long silence. Catherine spoke first. We suspected something like this. Marcus came highly recommended, but we've had concerns. 2 other senior employees quit suddenly after he arrived. Both were strong performers, with years of excellent reviews. When we asked exit interview questions, they were vague. Said it was time for a change. We wondered if there was more to the story. Robert nodded grimly. We've been quietly investigating for the past 2 weeks. Marcus doesn't know this, but we've had forensic IT reviewing company communications. We found some troubling patterns. My heart raced. What kind of patterns? Catherine and Robert exchanged a glance. Then Catherine said, Marcus has been leaking proprietary information to your former competitor, his old employer. We have evidence of multiple file transfers containing data bridge specifications, client lists, and strategic plans. Has been systematically stealing company secrets. The room tilted slightly. What? Brad is still on their payroll, Robert added, his voice hard. Has not a consultant. Has a corporate spy. They planted him here to gather intelligence and sabotage key initiatives. The plan was for Marcus to leave in 6 months, taking several key employees and all your project data with him. Brad would have already been embedded in the company, ready to feed information back. I sat back, stunned. The sabotage was not just about removing me. It was about corporate espionage on a massive scale. Your Sunday meeting wasn't about a project, Catherine continued. It was about getting you out of the way before anyone noticed what they were stealing. You refusing to show up actually disrupted their timeline. Brad is at the office right now, probably copying files. We have IT monitoring his activity as we speak. Robert looked at me with something like admiration. You standing firm on your boundaries, refusing to be bullied, that took real courage. It also gave us time to build our case. If you had caved and shown up today, we would have lost critical evidence of their pattern of intimidation. We're offering you the VP of Strategic Development position, Catherine said. Effective immediately. You'll report directly to Robert. The role comes with a significant compensation increase, equity stake, and authority to restructure operations as you see fit. I could barely process what I was hearing. I don't understand. Why are you offering this now? Before dealing with Marcus. Because we need someone in that role who has integrity, Robert said simply. Someone who stands up for what's right, even when it costs them something. You could have kept quiet about Marcus' misconduct. You could have just focused on getting the promotion. Instead, you documented everything and brought us a complete picture of the problem. That's exactly the kind of judgment we need in leadership, Catherine added. Tomorrow morning, we're terminating Marcus and Brad. We'll be pressing charges for corporate espionage. We want you there when it happens. As the new VP, you'll be taking over operational oversight. That means Marcus' former position reports to you now. The irony was almost too much. 24 hours ago, Marcus had threatened to fire me. Now I would be his superior for the brief time before his termination. We spent the next hour discussing the role, the compensation package, my vision for the department. By the time lunch ended at 2:30, I had signed the offer letter electronically. The official announcement would go out Monday morning at 6 o'clock. I walked out of that restaurant in a daze. The November afternoon was cold, but I barely felt it. Everything had changed in 3 hours. Marcus and Brad thought they had won. They thought I was cornered. They had no idea what was coming. Sunday evening passed in a surreal blur. I sat in my apartment, the signed offer letter on my laptop screen, still trying to process everything. I was going to be VP of Strategic Development. I was going to help remove Marcus and Brad from the company. I was going to lead the operational restructuring. It felt like justice and vindication and overwhelming responsibility all at once. At 9 o'clock Sunday night, I received an email from Robert's assistant. The official announcement would go company-wide at 6 Monday morning. A car would pick me up at 7:30 to arrive before Marcus. Robert wanted me in the executive suite when they handled the terminations. I barely slept. At 5:45 Monday morning, I was already dressed and drinking coffee when my phone started buzzing. Colleagues texting congratulations. People I had not heard from in months, suddenly reaching out. The announcement was out. At 7:15, I arrived at Tech Vista. The parking garage was mostly empty, but I saw 3 cars I did not recognize. Probably legal and security personnel Robert had arranged. The security guard at the front desk stood when I entered. "Congratulations, Miss Dania. Well deserved," I thanked him, touched by his genuine warmth. Inside, several early arrivals were already at their desks. People stood as I walked past, offering congratulations and smiles. Some looked relieved. Others seemed anxious, probably worried about changes ahead. Jenna was waiting at my desk with flowers. "I knew you had something planned. You were too calm all weekend. I should have trusted you." Tom was there too, looking sheepish. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up more. I should have stood with you." "You're standing now," I said. "That's what matters." At 7:55, I headed to the executive suite. Robert and Catherine were already there, along with Janet from HR, and 2 people I recognized as corporate attorneys. There was also a security officer standing discreetly near the door. "Marcus usually arrives around 8:15, Robert said. "Brad gets here earlier. Well, handle them separately." At 8:05, we got confirmation that Brad had entered the building. Security escorted him directly to a conference room on the 3rd floor, where another team was waiting. The plan was to handle both terminations simultaneously, so neither could warn the other. At 8:12, Marcus walked through the main entrance. I watched on the security monitor as he strode through the lobby with his usual confidence, coffee in hand, checking his phone. He was probably looking forward to my termination meeting this morning. He took the elevator to the 5th floor, walked toward his office, and stopped short when he saw me standing near the executive conference room. "What are you doing here?" His tone was sharp. "We have a meeting scheduled for my office. Now, actually, Marcus, I think you need to check your email," I said calmly. He frowned and pulled out his phone. I watched his face as he read the announcement. Confusion, then disbelief, then anger flashing across his features in rapid succession. "There must be some mistake," he said. "This doesn't make sense. You refused a direct order. You're supposed to be terminated." "The conference room, please." Robert's voice came from behind me. He stepped into view, his expression stern. "We need to talk." Marcus' face went pale. He followed us into the room where Catherine, the attorneys, and Janet waited. The security officer closed the door and stood beside it. Robert did not waste time. "Marcus Brennan, we're terminating your employment effective immediately. You're being dismissed for cause. Specifically, theft of proprietary information, corporate espionage, conspiracy to defraud, and multiple violations of company policy regarding employee treatment." He slid a folder across the table. "This contains evidence of your communications with representatives from our competitor. documentation of file transfers containing confidential company information, and recordings of your deliberate sabotage of employee performance. Marcus opened the folder, his hands shaking. As he flipped through pages of printed emails and transaction logs, his face went from pale to red. "This is ridiculous," he blustered. "You can't prove anything. These could be fabricated." Catherine spoke, her voice ice cold. "We have testimony from your former employer's IT department. You were still accessing their systems using credentials you were supposed to have surrendered. We have records of every file you transferred. We have your emails discussing payment arrangements with Brad for industrial espionage. And we have multiple witnesses to your harassment and retaliation against employees who threatened your plans," one of the attorneys added. "We're also filing charges with law enforcement. Corporate espionage is a federal crime. You'll be hearing from prosecutors." Marcus looked at me, his expression desperate and angry. "You did this. You went behind my back and sabotaged me." "No," I said quietly. "I documented your misconduct and reported it through proper channels. That's called accountability, not sabotage. You created this situation through your own choices." The meeting lasted 20 more minutes. Marcus denied, deflected, and finally threatened legal action. The attorneys remained unmoved. Every piece of evidence was documented and verified. He had no defense. Security escorted him from the building at 8:50. His personal items would be boxed and shipped. He was banned from company premises immediately. At 9 o'clock, I walked into the department. Marcus was gone. Brad was gone. The team gathered nervously in the common area, unsure what was happening. I stood before them and took a breath. I know the past few months have been difficult. We've all felt the tension and uncertainty. I want you to know that the issues causing that environment have been addressed. Marcus and Brad are no longer with the company. Their terminations were for cause and are not negotiable. Tom started clapping, slowly at first, then others joined. Within seconds, the entire department was applauding. Some people had tears in their eyes. The relief was palpable, like pressure releasing from a sealed container. "We're going to rebuild our culture," I continued. "Starting today, I promise you open communication, fair treatment, and recognition for good work. I also promise that bullying and intimidation will not be tolerated, ever. If you experience or witness misconduct, you'll have clear channels to report it without fear of retaliation." Jenna raised her hand. "What happens to our projects?" "Data Bridge is supposed to launch in 10 weeks. We stay on track," I said. "You all know your work. You're talented and capable. We're going to succeed because of your skills, not because someone is threatening you. Let's get to work." The department meeting ended with people actually smiling. As everyone dispersed, Tom approached me. "I'm sorry again for caving on Sunday, for not standing with you. You were protecting your family," I said. "I understand, but going forward, I need to know I can count on people to speak up when something's wrong, not just to protect me, but to protect each other. Can you do that?" He nodded firmly. "Yes, I promise." As I walked to my new office, larger and brighter than my old space, I felt the weight of leadership settling on my shoulders. This was not just about me anymore. I was responsible for protecting these people, for creating an environment where they could do their best work without fear. It was a responsibility I was ready to carry. The first week, as VP, passed in a whirlwind of meetings, restructuring plans, and getting up to speed on broader company strategy. I promoted Tom to senior manager, taking over my former role. Jenna became project lead on Data Bridge, a position she had earned 3 times over. I restructured reporting relationships to create better balance and accountability. I also implemented immediate policy changes. No mandatory weekend work without 2 weeks' notice, and clear business justification. Anonymous feedback system for reporting management concerns. quarterly skip-level meetings where employees could talk directly to senior leadership without their immediate supervisor present. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Productivity actually increased when people felt respected rather than threatened. Data bridge stayed on schedule, and team morale improved dramatically. 2 weeks after Marcus' termination, the company held an all-hands meeting. Robert publicly acknowledged what had happened, without naming Marcus specifically. He talked about the importance of integrity in leadership and the responsibility everyone had to maintain ethical standards. "We made mistakes in our hiring and oversight," Robert said. "We missed warning signs. We're implementing new procedures to prevent this from happening again. But I want to be clear. No title, no position gives anyone the right to abuse power. If you see it happening, report it. We will listen and we will act." After the meeting, several employees approached me privately. 3 of them had experienced similar treatment from Marcus, but had been too afraid to speak up. They thanked me for standing firm and creating space for others to come forward. That was when I truly understood the impact of what had happened. This was not just about my career. My refusal to accept bullying had opened the door for others to do the same. The ripple effects continued. The company implemented new vetting procedures for senior hires, including thorough reference checks and background verification. The board created an ethics hotline where employees could report concerns anonymously. Industry publications picked up the story, carefully worded to avoid legal issues but clear enough that other companies started examining their own cultures. 3 months after that Friday afternoon ultimatum, DataBridge launched successfully. The project exceeded performance targets by 32%. The team celebrated together, and several people thanked me for believing in them, even when Marcus was telling them they were not good enough. Standing in the office that evening, watching my team laugh and celebrate their achievement, I thought about the choice I had faced: work Sunday or lose my job. Neither option acceptable. Both designed to make me lose. I had chosen a third path. I had stood firm on my principles, documented the truth, and trusted that integrity would matter more than intimidation. It had been terrifying. There were no guarantees. I could have lost everything, but I had gained something more valuable than any job title: proof that I would not compromise my values under pressure. 6 months after my promotion, I was invited to speak at a local university's business program. A room full of students about to enter the workforce, eager and nervous about what lay ahead. I told them my story, leaving out names and specific company details. I explained the impossible choice, the systematic sabotage, the moment when standing up felt riskiest. "Here's what I learned," I said, looking at those young faces. "Your worth is not determined by someone else's insecurity. When a boss, a colleague, anyone tries to make you feel small, that's about their fear, not your value. Bullies count on fear and compliance. They create impossible situations hoping you'll choose the path of least resistance." I paused, making sure they were listening. Standing firm on boundaries is not insubordination. It's self-respect. True leaders don't demand blind obedience. They inspire willing collaboration. They create environments where people do their best work because they want to, not because they're afraid not to. A student raised her hand. "But what if standing up means losing your job?" "Not everyone can afford to take that risk." "You're right," I acknowledged. "Not everyone has the same safety net. Financial security affects your choices. But here's the thing. Sometimes losing a job that requires you to sacrifice your dignity is actually the better outcome, because staying in that environment costs you something too. Your mental health, your self-respect, your sense of who you are." Another student asked, "How do you know when to fight back versus when to let something go?" "Trust your gut," I said. If something makes you feel consistently diminished, if you're losing sleep, if you find yourself justifying treatment you would never accept for someone you care about, that's your signal. Document everything. Build your case. Use proper channels. But don't stay silent hoping it will get better on its own. After the talk, several students approached with their own stories. Internships where they were mistreated, jobs where they felt undervalued, situations where they did not know if speaking up was worth the risk. I listened to each one and gave the same advice. You deserve to be treated with respect. Don't accept less than that. On my way home that evening, I thought about Sunday afternoon 6 months ago, sitting in my car, trying to decide between two impossible choices. I had been so focused on the binary options Marcus presented that I almost missed the third path, refused to accept the premise of his ultimatum. He wanted me to believe I had to choose between my job and my appointment, between compliance and termination, between bending and breaking. But I chose neither. I chose integrity. I chose to stand firm and let the situation reveal who truly lacked character. And that choice opened doors I never knew existed. Not because the outcome was guaranteed. The promotion was not inevitable. The company could have sided with Marcus. I could have been fired and faced months of job searching with a termination on my record. But even if that had happened, I would still have had myself, my values intact, my self-respect uncompromised, and that would have been enough. The Monday after the Sunday I refused to work, the CEO called with congratulations on my promotion. But the real victory was not the title. It was knowing that when tested, I stood firm. That when bullied, I documented and reported instead of accepting abuse. That when given impossible choices, I found a third option. Sometimes you win by refusing to play a rigged game. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply say no and mean it. Now, standing in my office on a Friday evening, looking at the team I was privileged to lead, I understood what mattered most. Not the title, or the salary, or the recognition, but the culture we were building together, one where people felt safe to do their best work, where integrity mattered more than politics, where standing up for what was right was celebrated, not punished. That was leadership, not demanding compliance, but earning trust, not threatening consequences, but modeling values, not creating fear, but fostering respect. Marcus had taught me something valuable, though not what he intended. He showed me that true power comes from integrity, not intimidation, that the right opportunities will never require you to compromise your values, that sometimes the hardest choice is the only one worth making. Sunday, overtime, or fired. I chose neither, and in choosing neither, I chose myself. That was the only victory that truly mattered. I want to ask you something. Have you ever faced an impossible choice at work, where every option felt wrong? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below, because your experience might help someone else facing a similar situation right now. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that integrity matters more than compliance, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about standing firm when it counts. And share this with someone who needs to hear that they don't have to accept workplace bullying, that there's always a third option, that their worth is not determined by someone else's insecurity. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that you're stronger than you think, braver than you believe, and capable of standing firm even when it feels impossible. May you always find the courage to choose integrity over convenience, values over fear, and yourself over any job that demands you be less than you are.